Welcome to today's New England Himss webinar presented by premier sponsor Ricoh. Intelligent Automation for Clinical Data presented by Scott Francis, Technology Evangelist, PFU America Incorporated, a Ricoh company, and Josh Stein, Account Executive and Business Development with Solarity. Scott brings more than 30 years of document and imaging expertise to his position, where he's responsible for evangelizing Ricoh Document Scanners industry-leading scanner technology. He frequently provides thought leadership on document scanning use cases and best practices, in addition to the overall benefits of digital transformation solutions. He is joined by Josh today, who has over 14 years experience in the document automation and optimization space and focuses on clinical workflows for large healthcare customers, as well as developing strategic partnerships for Solarity's expansion in the healthcare market. Reminder, all lines are muted upon entry, so please send your questions via the Q&A feature. There is a Visa gift card that will be drawn at the end of today's session, and all participants are automatically entered. Please join me in welcoming Scott and Josh today.
All right. Well, thank you for that introduction. Both Josh and I are excited to join your lunchtime events and talk about the benefit of automating your document classification process using a combination of AI and good old-fashioned people skills. As I start today's presentation, I'd like to talk about Ricoh. So you'll see a lot of references to Ricoh Document Scanners, and you may not be familiar with Ricoh Document Scanners. And that is because we are actually Fujitsu document scanners. For over 30 years, we've been selling document scanners under the Fujitsu brand. And we are the largest scanning manufacturing in healthcare, with installations in over 75% of the hospitals out there. You might be using Fujitsu scanners. Last August, the Fujitsu company that has made those scanners for the last 30 years was acquired by Ricoh. And with that acquisition, our entire company on the Fujitsu scanner side has now joined Ricoh. And with that, we have adopted the Ricoh brand. So when you see Ricoh document scanners today, they are in fact the former Fujitsu document scanners. As I mentioned, the whole company has moved over, so there are no changes to the products, the support team, even the part numbers of our scanners have stayed the same. And our commitment to you remains steadfast. Fujitsu scanners, now Ricoh, last long and perform great. But really, today's webcast is learning about the benefits of automation. Josh, thank you for joining today's webcast.
Welcome, excited to be here.
Excellent. All right, so let's jump into today's presentation. Josh, can you start by really talking about the current trends and challenges in healthcare today?
Yeah, 100%. Thanks, Scott. And so as you know, Solarity, so these are just some trends we see happening in healthcare that certainly apply to the conversation we're going to have today. And one of them is more point of care processing every day. So the goal is to get as real time with data as we possibly can be. So that's a trend we see in every organization that we speak to. Data in the system has increased to outpace every other industry. So I think this is important, right? As much as healthcare is going more paperless, right? Continuing to have some of these automated processes, the data that's actually within the healthcare system is only continuing to grow. So certainly seeing that continue to expand year over year. And so that's a trend that really plays to how do you automate getting some of this information as we continue to have the conversation today. Third, labor constraints. These are going to continue for the foreseeable future, especially in the positions that do most of the processing work, right? We know that there's shortages of nurses. We know that's been going on for a long time with burnout and things we'll talk about that have also been happening, right? That backfill rate, and I tell somebody or talk to other people in other industries, a lot of other industries, you can backfill a person, right? But a nurse, it's a 4 to 6 year training, right, process in order to get another person into that position.
Josh, you froze.
All right, well, we'll give Josh a second to return to the call, but just really continuing Josh's thought. I think everyone on the call, we don't have to say it to you, everyone understands the current labor shortage in healthcare. And as Josh was just talking about, bringing on a new nurse is going to take several years to bring them up to speed. So one of the answers to address this problem is to A, automate processes, and B, try to offload a lot of the administrative tasks that nurses and other healthcare clinicians, are forced to do at the hospital. If we can move those off site, we can increase the productivity of our healthcare workers, and we can securely tap off-site resources, which will increase productivity. Today's presentation is all about using the combination of automation fueled by artificial intelligence and the human element to make that data perfect. And that is the answer that can help hospitals everywhere address this personnel shortage. And the last bullet here on the slide is because of the pressures of COVID, we certainly understand that hospitals can be in the red with today's situation. By alleviating these processes and doing process automation, not only are you going to make your nurses more productive, but you're going to save money as well. So we think these are important issues in healthcare today. So why don't we queue up our first poll question for all of our attendees. We're going to do several poll questions today to help fuel that gift giveaway. So here's our first poll question. What is your EMR system? So for your electronic health records, which system are you using? And you can see the choices here. If your software is not on the list, there's other at the bottom. So let's give that about a minute to go, and we'll see today's responses. All right, I'm seeing a lot of responses come over as we look at the poll building. We'll give everyone a little bit more time. And I'm going to go into a document scanning maturity model next. And the best part is that the automation that we're talking about today is really available across the healthcare EHR spectrum. So regardless of what solution you're using, Fujitsu, now Ricoh Document Scanners are well placed in all of these EHR software vendors, and the technology that Josh and I are going to talk about today is available with all of these applications. All right, we're coming up just on 1 minute, so I want to thank everyone for participating, and we can see the results here, I believe. If we're showing those on the screen, everyone can get an appreciation of the EHR vendors. But again, the point here is that what we're talking about today is available across the spectrum, and I'm sharing the results now for everyone to see. All right, so let's move on from our first poll question and jump right into the document capture maturity model. So Himss has an excellent maturity model, and reaching level 7 has a lot of requirements, but those are important requirements. Ann Snowden, who is the Chief Research Officer of Himss at the annual conference just a couple of months ago, delivered an address, and current Himss research shows that hospitals that reach the highest end of that maturity model simply have higher safety records, and that's just one of the benefits. Document capture has a maturity model as well. And again, for Himss level 7, you need to be able to capture and classify documents within 24 hours. So as we look at the document capture maturity model, there's a similar evolution of the best practices to capture documents and to classify that information so it's available. So right there at the beginning of our maturity model, we have scanning to a flat image, where we're just using the file name to essentially tag or index the document. This is the simplest part of classifying your documents. It's manual because someone's got to name that file, and it is prone to errors, and you're limited to the information in the file name. So this is not recommended, but again, this is that first step in the maturity model. Step number 2 is manual indexing. And this is where most hospitals are today. At the national event this year, I talked to a lot of hospitals who are still challenged with manual indexing. And manual indexing has its benefits because we can classify more information than just using the file name alone, but it has a lot of challenges with consistency and accuracy, and it's also extremely labor intensive. And if we're forcing our healthcare professionals to do administrative tasks, it pulls them away from doing what they do best, which is give world-class patient care. So manual indexing is very common. It has its benefits, but it's very labor intensive, and there are challenges with consistency and accuracy. Step 3 is zonal OCR or barcode processing. We see a lot of healthcare organizations putting barcodes on their documents to index them correctly, or they can use zone OCR templates, which have to be developed for specific form types to extract that information. These are more automated than step 2 because we're not forcing healthcare workers to key in all of the fields from scratch, but there are still some issues. If we're using zonal OCR, there's a lot of setup time required, and we're not able to scan different types of documents in the same batch. Barcode is much more accurate, but it still has the requirement to add that barcode sticker to the documents, which is an added step again for our healthcare professionals. And searchable PDF. This is the next step in the evolution. Searchable PDF is great because it's automated, but it's not really viable for healthcare applications because searchable PDFs in themselves aren't able to identify key classifications or index terms. It is great to have searchable PDF as a backup, but it's not good enough for your primary indexing requirements. And where we're at today, so at the top of the maturity model here in the year 2023 is intelligent document recognition. This is where the software application uses artificial intelligence to understand the document. I'll talk about that on the next slide, but this is really stage 5, and this is where the future is going with document capture and classification. It is a great technology because it's going to automate the classification process to a degree. So I want to be careful. I want to go back to Ann Snowden's review at the Himss conference, and they asked her, what is artificial intelligence? And she said, artificial intelligence really is establishing single sign-on for all of your applications. And I couldn't agree with her more. Ann's point was, artificial intelligence is great, but let's look at the base level requirements like forcing clinicians to log into different systems as they go through their day. That is time consuming, and that is available today. Well, I'm happy to say that intelligent document recognition is also a viable technology today, as long as there is a human process to QA and to address errors. In itself, it is not good enough to use. It requires that added step. And that's what we're going to talk about today. A combination of AI and people processing is the secret combination that delivers the best performance, cost savings, and productivity increases. All right, so if you're out there and you're doing manual classification, there's a lot of issues with that. So first, as I mentioned before, if you're forcing your healthcare professionals, your clinicians to code documents manually, especially if they're doing it at the point that those forms are coming in, it's taking away time from them providing patient care. And based on that shortage of workers, based on that need to increase capacity to address those financial concerns, this should not be happening. We need to alleviate them from all of that administration so they can focus on doing what they do best. And when we rely on people to do that coding, it can delay the time it takes to get the information into the system, because simply put, they are focused on giving patient care. And if these administrative tasks are taking them a long time, they're going to offload that scanning to when they have some free time. That might be the next shift. So when we are using these processes manually, it's going to delay the availability of patient information. And that's going to affect our ability to comply with Himss Level 7. But more importantly, if information isn't available, it's going to lead to issues in providing care. And people are highly smart, but these systems are complex. Josh talked about the training time for new nurses being 4 to 6 years. Well, learning IT systems is complicated. And even though we can do training to train our healthcare professionals on how to code documents and what classifications to use, when we use people for these processes, everyone is going to do them slightly different. It is hard to get consistency. And once in a while, we may make a mistake. And so these are all issues that will affect downstream processes. And it's expensive. We all know that the price of labor has gone up significantly. And because of that, if we're using our most expensive, our most important employees to do administrative, it is costing us money unnecessarily. So these are the issues with doing document classification manually. So the benefit of automating records is really the invert of all of those issues I just talked about. When we use automation, we use artificial intelligence to do document classification, we get the same consistency every single time. As I mentioned, human intervention and quality assurance is still required, but the base indexing and classification itself is consistent, leading to a higher degree of accuracy. And as we discussed on the last slide, when we are automating the process and we're not manually coding the data, we can get the information in the system accurately and available much faster. And these are very important. We can access information if the patient's at the hospital, if they're at a clinic, if they're at a specialist, that information is available in real time. And we're able to save money, simply put, by alleviating those labor requirements from our most important employees. We can save money as well as benefiting from the improved accuracy and faster availability of information. And because our healthcare professionals don't have those administrative tasks, they are more productive and they simply can see more patients and they can do more work that matters. And this is very important. You know, going back to the introduction from Josh and talking about the current healthcare landscape, we have to overcome the labor shortage. We have to allow our current staff to achieve more, to process more patients, to give even better healthcare. These are all important requirements, and this technology can deliver that as well. And of course, all of this leads to improved patient care, which is what we're here for. So automating records with that great human quality assurance to make sure everything goes smoothly is the right formula for success. All right, why don't we jump into the second poll question, and then we'll jump into a description of what intelligent document processing is. So here's the question: are you storing documents off-site or on-site? So we'll give everyone about a minute to fill out the next poll question. All right, see some answers coming in. I'll publish the results soon. But just really talking about that, if you're storing documents off-site, it may not be a significant cost until you have to access those documents. And when you have to access the documents, if you order the wrong box, it's going to take a while to get that box of documents. And if it was the wrong box, you're going to repeat that process over and over again. In the future, we're going to be able to get more information from data mining our healthcare records. So we can save money and we can benefit from the information by scanning those records and storing them securely. And this is another great way to use offsite workers that don't have to be in the hospital to be able to access that information securely. All right, we just did a minute. We can see the poll question here. Many of you are storing documents offsite. So document scanning certainly has some advantages for you in terms of cost savings, productivity, and business intelligence or healthcare intelligence, especially as the technology gets better to data mine that information securely. All right, and I'll share those results. And it looks like almost 70% of you are sharing documents on site. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead and talk about the process for intelligent document processing. So it really does start with document scanning. So that is the first step. Ricoh document scanners are focused on great performance, and they allow you to get documents into the system quickly. But that's just the first step into the journey, right? So step one is to digitize the documents. From there, image processing is very important because we're going to use artificial intelligence to recognize the document. And that means we need to enhance the image to bring out all of the original details. Forms could have dark backgrounds. There might be light pencil mark notes on the form that are hard for scanning devices to pick up. Ricoh document scanners have great image quality, and with image enhancement, we're able to create recognition-ready images that are going to lead to that process automation accuracy. So once the image has been scanned and fully enhanced, we're actually behind the scenes, we're going to break that image into multiple layers. First, we're going to keep the image itself with all of the fidelity of the original image. So it's the real McCoy of that image. But we're also going to create a text layer. So we're going to do a full text OCR of everything on that scanned image. And that's what's necessary for the natural language processing. So natural language processing simply is using artificial intelligence to read a document like a human would. And it allows the technology to understand where key information is on the piece of paper or the scanned document, regardless of its position. And this is a difference between AI-based recognition and zonal OCR that I discussed earlier today. And with today's technology, it's a combination of machine learning and data model. What does that mean? It means that the artificial intelligence engine has to be trained. We can take a certain form type and get 20 different forms of that form type, and we feed it into the AI engine and we train it. This is what this document is. This is the type of information you're going to pull out from this form. So the technology is growing. In the future, we'll be able to do free form classification with removing a lot of that upfront training. But today, training and data modeling is required. It has an excellent return on investment in terms of cost savings and productivity, but it is required. And so as we look at implementing these systems, this is a necessary step. But again, artificial intelligence is always getting smarter. So once you train your engine and you continue to use it, it's going to continue to get smarter. And that really allows the artificial intelligence to pull out all of the key information from those documents. And we can validate that information against your existing healthcare patient database or other databases to increase the accuracy. And then what I mentioned before, AI is not complete without a quality assurance and error handling layer. Artificial intelligence is great, but there's always going to be a human element required in order to perfect the process. You can offload that process to third-party services and do it away from the hospital which allows you to process the information faster and allow your healthcare professionals to do what they do best. Once the information has been reconciled and shown as accurate, then we can export it into the application. And with that, your data is available. So this is the process for intelligent document processing. There are several steps. The scanner's got to be able to capture the image correctly, and all of the image must be captured. Image enhancement makes the data much more recognition ready. Once we do that, we create that text layer, and we use machine learning and data modeling to identify, classify the information, we quality assurance, and from there we can export it and make it available. And that is the process. All right, so we're going to go to a real world study, and we're going to talk about the benefit of the technology that we've been discussing so far. So Josh, are you back online?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Sorry about the technical difficulties there. So yes, I'm excited to share this with you. So like Scott just said, we just talked you through that process, but Solarity, being that we've been in this business for actually 60 years, we've been indexing and scanning medical records. And so we did a time study on this particular part of the process. So today I'm just briefly going to walk you through what we did for one of these clients, show you the different times and how this process breaks down, because as Scott just broke down that process, right? The scanning the image, right? The machine learning, all the image cleanup, all this part of the process. We're going to actually break that down into steps and show you the amount of time that your teams within your organization are spending on this process. So if you don't mind, Scott, can you go to the next slide? So just to give you guys a little bit of background here of how we got into doing this time study. We had a client of ours, large client, document imaging department, is struggling with inconsistent, cumbersome process, right? Poor turnaround times and inexperienced leadership at a departmental level. So they said, hey, you know, Solarity, can you come in and look at our process and give us, you know, some best practices and help us out here. So we sent out the president of operations, been in medical indexing for 30 years. So he and one of our account reps went and spent 2 full days on site at this client, basically detailing out their process. And so the following information was pulled from, you know, large reports detailing from their director of their leadership level, right? Specifically, some of these analytics that you're going to see. It contains information, the time it takes to prepare a document, scan it, review it, and index it using Epic. I saw as we went through the poll earlier, there's a bunch of different systems. Today, we'll be talking to a client that was specifically using Epic. This information was verified as accurate. However, you know, we should note that the time study was done for the purpose of illustrating the process of scanning and checking clinical documentation. The numbers presented are based on our observation on this client. And as we go through it today, I'm going to give you, this was our average and what we saw at this one client. I'll give you one of our best case scenarios as well as we talk through it. So if you want to go ahead and give me next slide. Perfect. So this is just the high level of the study. So this particular client had 50 clinics. They had 13 employees that were responsible and dedicated to doing this scanned work. And their annual document volume was 1.2 million. So this is just giving you guys a frame of reference. And this study was only focused on the ambulatory document volume. So obviously there's ambulatory and acute. Those can be different. So in this case, we focused specifically on the ambulatory. But to what Scott and I have talked about, and actually Scott and I have been a lot of fun conversations about healthcare, the challenge right now is really not in the inpatient environment because that's fairly well refined and obviously all in one building. What you see with the clinical and the ambulatory environment, it's spread out, right? So the resources are spread out and really the need for help is spread out over a greater group of folks and potentially, right, just location wise, it's a greater distance in between these locations. So we really feel like a big opportunity for this type of automation does sit in the clinics in the ambulatory space. The next one. All right, so this is just breaking down the process, right? So if we take the process as per what Scott's already talked about, right? When you are going to scan a document in a clinical environment, first thing you're going to do is you got to prep the document. Now, what does that mean? Historically, right, if you're using an Epic or an on-base, and Scott mentioned this earlier, You're going to have to separate this by patient. You're going to separate it by document type. Potentially, you've got staples in it. You've got paper clips. So they're going to prep that in order to be able to scan it in. So then they're going to go in the system and they're going to look up that patient's MRN number. So they're going to do that lookup. And if they have to, right, they're going to stamp that document, right? So best available copy, or they're going to stamp it in a way saying, hey, this is good. We're ready to again look up the patient. So we got MRN, then we're going to look up the patient, right? It's record. Then we're going to scan that document. So if you're using Epic, right, you're going to probably be in Media Manager, and this is all the steps you've been doing to do a one document at a time kind of a setup, and you're going to scan in that document. So that takes 5 seconds. You're going to take another 10 seconds. You're going to review that image, make sure the page order is correct. Then you're going to choose the document type that you have, right? You've organized all this before you scanned it, but now you got to choose it within the system. You're going to apply any additional descriptors. So you might have a consent, but there might be a specific date you want to put to that consent. You might have multiple consents. So this is that you're going to apply that additional descriptor, right? And that can take you 30 seconds. So there can be multiple descriptors that you need to put onto this. So that's why it takes that 30 seconds. Now, overall, that total time to process is 128 seconds through that entire process. When we looked at the metrics that we got back from the HIM department, that came back at 186. And what we really attributed that to is that's just regular time loss for any position, right? This person isn't only doing this every minute of the day. They're checking emails, they're doing other team things, right, within the environment. So that's why we saw the 186, but the real time was 128 seconds for the actual document processing. And I told you that I would tell you this. One of the largest organizations we work with on their same time study, we did see it get as low as 90 seconds in that environment, but this 128 is a good average for most organizations. Next slide. All right, perfect. So this is going to talk about what if we don't have to scan it now, right? We have an image, right, that we've already scanned in, it's digital, but now what typically happens on this, if we're putting that into a sweep file, now we got to go search for those files. We say it takes about 30 seconds, but if you think about that, you're going into your clinical file, you're trying to find that day, right, it's named some garbly goop, as I say, name, it's 1 2 3 4 7 2 5 6 ABC, right, and you got to go find it. But once you find it, right, that takes you about 30 seconds. Now you still got to look the patient up in Epic, you still got to select and upload that document. You still have to review, right, that document. You still have to choose the doc type, right? And you're still going to apply the descriptors, and then you're going to delete the document from the network folder. So even though we've got it digital there, because it's not automated and we're not doing any of the things we'll talk about here in a minute, you're still at 135 seconds, even assuming that it's digital, but it's basically digital with none of the things that Scott's talked about, right? We haven't teed it up. We haven't used automation. None of those things have happened. And so it's just, again, a fairly manual process. Even though we're digital, we haven't used any automation tools to really improve the time. Next up. So this one I really appreciate. So this just shows at a high level, all the things that we just talked about, right, are the traditional way of essentially doing this if you're doing this manual currently. And if you look to the right, and essentially with the Solarity solution, you insert all those pages. You do not now separate by patient. You don't separate by document type. None of those steps happen in prep. You simply put the entire stack into the scanner and you press send. From that, right, we're able to basically involve minimal staff at that point. And again, what did we talk about earlier? Clinical staff is overwhelmed. So what we've just done is take this sorting and organizing and all, they don't do any of that. They take the stack of papers that they have, they put it into the scanner and they say go. So now we've also centralized the indexing of that function as well, meaning that there's not 50 different clinics with 50 different people with 50 different ways of doing it. This is now centralized in a way that we create the consistency that we talked about, which is paramount and everybody needs. You can use our software essentially to route those documents, right? The Solarity software. And then we also have centralized QA function, right? So now we can actually say, did that get indexed correctly, right? And one of the things I think is unique, we'll talk about this to Solarity, but because we've been doing this for 60 years, we have a great software platform. But one of the things that's really amazing is our QA and our ability to quality control the process, because that's part of what you're dealing with here is you've got an AI system, right? That needs the quality, as Scott mentioned earlier, Our human quality control systems are 60 years mature. We know how to sample correctly and sample the inputs and the outputs to make sure that we are getting the absolute best product to the end source, in this case being Epic. And as you see it, we get a 99% plus, right, quality score because of the automation plus the people process plus our quality controls. In this case too, documents can be available within an hour. So now you're talking about a process that typically, as Scott mentioned earlier, could sit around and wait for somebody to get to this work, right? And that could potentially be an end of shift or in potentially 12 hours. Now that's all being done, that entire process, within an hour. So you've taken that process at the clinical level to put pages in a scanner within an hour, right? You have those documents in Epic, fully indexed and ready for review or use within the patient care environment. The next slide. So this one's a great illustration here. This just shows that in the previous process, the traditional method was, right, one document, you put it in, as we just mentioned, that 128 seconds. It's 2 minutes plus, right? Just to process that one document within the traditional manual environment. Using AI and managed services like Solarity, right, we can take that up to 20 documents in a minute, right? And that's just the power of AI and automation, as well as, to Scott's point, anything it doesn't do using a service, right, in a group that has these quality controls like Solarity to drive that number up dramatically. Oh, I like this one as well, right? So traditional method for an hour, using an AI, right, managed service, we can take that up to 170 to 200. And again, just to be clear, this is in a clinical environment, typically with outside records, right? Not a lot of barcodes. And this is a dramatic, almost a 400%, right, increase in productivity by leveraging the tool, right? And you leveraging AI, right? And this is, make it very generic here. This is just using automation that's available in 2023 to really help your teams be more productive. Next slide. So this is a great summary. So again, we've been talking all the way down to granularity of documents and all these things, but the traditional method was about 25,000 hours, essentially a year, right? Drop that down to 7,000 hours. So a 73% reduction in time. And I think this right now, and Scott and I'm super passionate about this. I mean, this is your clinician's time that is not being spent on tasks like paperwork. It's being spent in front of patients, right? So time is part of this. Money is the other side, right? The labor cost savings, 435,000 a year, based on an FTE wage that's fairly reasonable for this day and age. I mean, 46 for even some of your clinical or clerical kind of staff. That's not uncommon. This is a very, right, I would say, run of the mill for you guys that are, right, New England and the Northeast. That could be more, right? Obviously, we see California's and them being extremely high as well. So big labor savings here. And really on just leveraging new technology. So go ahead, next slide. Thanks, Scott.
These are great points, Josh. And I think our labor estimates are probably a little low, as you just mentioned. So for everyone on today's webcast, you can actually calculate your own document scanning and indexing costs right now. So here's just a step-by-step way to do that. First, establish how many documents you're scanning every year. How many pages are you capturing? And then is to divide that by the average number of pages in a document. For the study that Josh just showed you, it's 2.5 pages. Then you would multiply that by the amount of time from scanning, paper prep, and then classifying that document. And then once you have that number, you can divide it by 60 to get the amount of minutes that you're spending, and then by 60 again to figure out the amount of hours, and then multiply that by your labor number. So here's just an example of how that would work. As we mentioned, that labor cost is probably pretty conservative. So why don't we update that number to something more reasonable, and let's see the effect it's going to have on that study. So now we can see the updated number based on 500,000 documents being scanned every year, and an average of 2.5 actual pages per document, and a scan time of 25 seconds and a processing time of 105 seconds, so a total of 130 seconds, you can see what the cost of labor is just for that document scanning. And if your volume's a lot higher than 500,000 pages, we can see that that price goes up substantially. So let's look at that. So let's just increase that volume to 1 million pages. And we can see the effect it's going to have. And there's the update there. Over $700,000. So you can see that the cost savings that Josh just talked about is real, but it's more than just cost savings. It's increased accuracy. It's increased data availability. It's higher productivity and capacity for your healthcare professionals. So we're saving money. We're giving better patient care. We're increasing our safety rate. All of that is available with today's technology. It just needs to be installed responsibly. The technology is available, the people, processes, and managed services are available, and all of those combined to deliver this value. All right, Josh, why don't we go and take a look at some additional case studies?
Perfect. Thank you, Scott. And this I'm obviously super passionate about here, guys. I saw something earlier, and it's compelling that we're talking to the Himss group here today, because Himss level 7, right, is about turnaround times, right? It's about that you have to hit these certain thresholds. And I'm going to give you an example here, right? UCSD Health, before we came on with our solution, you know, they were at 72 to 96 hours in order to process some of this information. And with our solution and with our services, which we'll talk about here in a minute, we dropped that down to 22 minutes. So on our 1 hour turnaround time or service, we average 25 minutes across the country. It looks like UCSD is averaging a little better than that at 22 minutes. The indexing errors drop, and as you can see here, dramatically, right? 93% reduction in errors. And the reason for that is what we just talked about. We're centralizing this processing. We're putting a ton of quality controls around that. And the inconsistencies that they were seeing from department to department, from group to group, from clinic to clinic, right? Those are reduced dramatically using our solution. And then headcount. So a 24 FTE count before and down to 1 at this point in time there. And their cost savings per year, $823,000 a year. And I want to make this very clear, because I love how Scott and I did the first calculations for you. This calculation is the calculation after they have paid for the Solarity services. So one of the things when you're doing that other number is that that's just the true cost of this. This is that taking that cost, right, and then essentially removing our cost of our service. It's still $823,000 a year in savings to their group. And not only are you getting that savings, but this ties to everything that's important to healthcare right now. You've improved turnaround time. You've improved accessibility to data. You've reduced errors, right? Every single bucket that you need to tick, including saving money in a time that we have a ton of financial constraint going on. That is why I think, and as we say this today, right, this isn't just Solarity. This is looking very seriously at automation in every parts of your process, because this is what it means for healthcare right now, and why we're so passionate about it. Next one. And then Atrius, another great example wanted to share here. So in their case, right, turnaround times were 2 to 4 weeks. And so when I go back to Himss, level 7, right, they aren't even in the stratosphere before we get right on board with them of getting anywhere close to Himss level 7. But now, right, with our solution in place, they went from 2 to 4 weeks. They're 5 to 10 hours. So in their case, they're using our 12-hour turnaround service. We average 5 hours across the country. That's where you're seeing they're in the 5 to 10 hour turnaround time. But obviously game changer for them, 2 to 4 weeks. And now within 5 to 10 hours, those documents are available, indexed, ready to go, and able to create better care. Headcount before 34, again, after our solution, dropping that down to 7. And in their case, they were going to make a huge DMS capital expenditures cost in order to attack this problem from a CapEx standpoint. We're also looking at this really as an OpEx. You know, to Scott's point yesterday, we're taking that OpEx that you had in our calculations before and really using this to fill in for that OpEx. And that's typically why folks now are not going to invest in a CapEx type of a budget expenditure. They're going to treat it as an OpEx. The next slide. And just to clarify, right? So I think one of the things that Scott's mentioned is, and I've been around, as I said, 14 years around OCR, document processing. The real magic is that obviously the software does a lot and it makes our teams extremely efficient. But this is actually our processing center in Springfield, Missouri. This team, they are the ones working those errors. This is the human intervention to get to that 99%. And really make it so that your teams in healthcare can be hands off. Essentially, once they hit scan, we are doing the majority of the work and creating extremely high quality for your teams. And this is how we're doing it. So this is the, as I guess Scott and I would say, the secret sauce, right? This is what makes Solarity very different, but this is just a picture of the processing center to show you guys what that looks like.
Josh, it's great to see your processing center in Springfield. And that just really drives home the main point of today's presentation. The artificial intelligence technology today can provide huge productivity and cost savings. It requires you to scan documents as soon as possible and use a document capture device with amazing image quality and image enhancement. And they've got to be easy to use. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But once we harness AI, we still need that people layer to perfect the information. And if we can use all of those components together, that is going to deliver the ultimate solution, again, that's available today. Josh, you want to talk about how Solarity is different?
100%. And so at a very high level, just there's a lot of, and Scott and I know this, there's a lot of AI, there's a lot of OCR, there's a lot of machine learning out there in the overall market. What makes Solarity extremely unique is that we are only doing healthcare documents. We've only ever done healthcare documents. So you see an extreme, as he just mentioned too, on modeling. As I laugh when people have to build the models right within the standard machine learning space, they're not coming with any context. What you'll see from a group like Solarity is a ton of contextual knowledge. And I always say AI is only as good as the people that program it. Well, we've been doing this for 60 years. So you can only guess that we probably programmed our AI engine pretty well out of the gate because we have that 60 years of experience that we put into the product. We're deep medical records processing experience, not a doc management company. I want to be very clear with where Solarity fits in the mix here. We are just a processing engine. And essentially, we work with all the document management groups that are out there. We're very complimentary to them. Our goal is just to get them good information in a timely manner, as Scott talked about today, and really pull this indexing task off of the clinical labor force. Deliver seamless automated experience with 99% accuracy. Really unmatched in the industry. To Scott and I's point, I don't care how good your OCR gets, it doesn't get to 99.9%. And so we know that that's a big differentiator from our competition. And over 80 current clients within the top 500 healthcare systems, results that show happy and satisfied clients at scale. But I think this is interesting as I was at Himss with Scott. I mean, there's certainly groups that talk about that they want to do this. When you have 80 extremely large healthcare organizations that use your product, it shows you that we're trusted in that space already, and we're not saying we think we can do it. We've been doing it, right? And we're only continuing to add more and more year over year of some of the largest healthcare systems in the country. So extremely excited about what we're doing.
Awesome. Well, Josh, thanks for that. Those case studies are amazing and they're real. Over 500 organizations are using this solution. All right, why don't we pivot to our last poll question, or our next poll question, and then we'll round out today's webcast.
I'm sorry, Scott, do you want the scanning document one or the coding one? I apologize.
Let's go with the coding one, please.
Okay, got it.
All right, so for our next poll question, are you coding documents manually? And I'll publish the results in a sec, but I'm definitely seeing a consistent trend here in the responses, and a lot of people are saying yes. And one of Josh's points is whether you're coding documents at the point of capture or you're doing it within some other group within the healthcare organization, it's still costing you money, capacity, consistency, and availability. So this solution is available regardless of how you're doing it today. All right, watching those poll responses come in. All right, let me go ahead and I'm going to close out the poll and let's share those results. 68% are coding documents manually. And it would be great to have a conversation. If you're not coding documents manually, how is that classification process going? Thank you for that. All right. And let's jump into the final part of today's webcast and really talk about Ricoh Document Scanners. Again, formerly, we've been Fujitsu Document Scanners for the last 30 years. And with the acquisition by Ricoh Group, our entire scanner division, from our engineers to our manufacturing to all of our support and team, customer-facing team around the world have all moved over to the Ricoh Group of companies. And one of the questions that came over on QA earlier is there a new edition? And I think that might be referring to, is there a new version of our Fujitsu, now Ricoh document scanners? And the answer is yes. Many of you have used our FI 7160. It is the top selling scanner in business and the top selling scanner in healthcare. If you've gone into a pharmacy or in your hospitals, most likely you're going to see an FI 7160 right there at the front counter scanning those records. We now have the FI 8170, and that is pictured here on the slide. The new FI 8170 has all of the great capabilities of the 7160, but it adds a lot more technology. But simply put, putting all of those technology to the side, what you get when you buy a Ricoh document scanner is you get a scanner that is fast and has great paper handling. Now, in Josh's study, the initial one that we saw today, they were scanning those documents within 25 seconds. If you include document prep and scanning, that's pretty impressive because you still have to have the software tell the scanner to scan the documents, and you've got to be able to quickly scan those documents reliably. Well, that was an FI 7160 that company was using, which is why their scan time itself was excellent. It really was the document classification that elongated that process. And we need the best image quality because with that best image quality and image enhancement, we're able to increase the recognition accuracy, which is extremely important for artificial intelligence. And you need dependable data integrity. And that means we're capturing the entire page, even if it's crooked when it goes through the scanner. And we have great technology to make sure that two documents never go through the scanner at the same time, which could cover up data. We have to make that scanning process fast and easy for that frontline worker. Those documents have to get scanned in real time, but we can alleviate the entire remaining process to get that information accurately into the system quickly. But we need that first scan to be reliable. And that's what Ricoh document scanners deliver. We've got automatic features that make them easy to use. So you don't have to spend a lot of time training those frontline workers on how to scan documents. It really is just loading the documents and initiating the scanning, and the scanners are going to do the rest. And of course, our Ricoh document scanners, again, formerly Fujitsu document scanners, have the highest reliability, and they will last 4 years. And if you're using our Fujitsu, now Ricoh scanners, you know that firsthand. All right. And really, it's all the different use cases within healthcare. For patient registration, of course, claims processing, making sure to comply with all of those new regulations that require the data availability for your patients and providers. Making sure that your hospital is reimbursed in real time with minimal intervention between you and the insurance provider. Our document scanners provide those quality issues to help you mitigate those disputes with those insurance providers, making the best medical records, and of course the back office as well, whether it's legal, accounting, purchasing, we can image enable those processes as well. and emerging applications like clinical documentation improvement using scanning and artificial intelligence and human QA to make sure that when a patient goes through a hospital, if it's acute, to make sure that we bill the insurance company for everything that we did for that patient while they were there. So this is another great way to increase your ROI. And this data, these systems are available today. And I mentioned the 8170, here it is. We also have our FI800R, which is a great solution for workstation on wheels. We have a lot of cart partners that make great cart solutions. We are showing them off at Himss. Howard Medical is one of them. Again, a great way to mobilize that registration process. And we have larger scanners for all of you who have those document archives and offsite storage. We have larger scanners that can process tens of thousands of documents a day to get those all securely online. And just real quick, I'm going to show a demo of our new scanner that does not require a PC and can scan documents directly to the network, cloud, directly to Solarity. So your clinicians don't have to drive scanning from the software. They can do it directly from the scanner. So before I jump into that, why don't we load our last poll question on document scanning? All right, how do you scan documents? Are you using a dedicated document scanner like Fujitsu, now Ricoh Document Scanners? Are you using MFPs? Or are you not scanning documents at all? Seeing some answers come in. Just looking at our time, we'll give it another 40 seconds or so. One of the advantages of Ricoh document scanners is they are small, so they can be right at the point that you are serving the patient. If you're using an MFP, you might have to walk over to that device, pardon me, and that might take time as well. All right, almost done here. So a lot of responses. Great participation today. Thank you very much. And let's go ahead and end the poll and we will publish the results. So we are sharing the results now. So 59% of you are using dedicated document scanners. 30% are using MFPs and just a few are not scanning documents at all. Again, digitizing your documents and automating process is the #1 way to increase your productivity, increase the speed of information into the system, and simply provide better healthcare. All right, so sharing those results, there they are. All right, thank you for participating. All right, let's see a quick demonstration. Actually, we might jump into an image enhancement example, and then we'll do a quick demonstration. So we talked about image processing. So the scanner has to be able to capture the image intelligently, but image processing is important as well for simple things like just doing an automatic size detection. So we just capture the document itself. And if the document needs to be rotated, again, for OCR to work, the document's got to be rotated. So we have great automatic rotation capabilities. We might have data in color that we need to preserve. So we can automatically detect whether color processing is required. We can deskew documents. We can remove blank pages so the operator doesn't have to. And we can do more sophisticated things like dropping out color. So if you're scanning HCFA forms, we can drop out the red form template. Again, auto rotation to make sure the images are upright. We can even provide multi-image processing. So if you want to retain a color and a black and white of the same scan at scan time, we can do that so you don't have to process the document twice. And then more importantly, original documents, forms might have artifacts that are going to make OCR difficult. These 4 examples are all showing issues where OCR is going to fail. Our scanners, you can see in the red highlight, we're able to remove that dark background and actually invert the text, or we can remove those dark backgrounds so we can just get to the data itself. We can remove watermarks or even stamps. We look at competitive solutions. They're simply not able to do it. Even if they can do maybe one, they cannot do it across the board. So this is the advantage of using Ricoh document scanners. with all of your artificial intelligence-based processing. So as we round out today's webcast, I'm going to show a quick demonstration. This shows how fast one of your healthcare clinicians can scan documents. So I'm going to start the video here. The user is going to load the documents. They're going to use their ID badge to log into the scanner. Their own profiles will appear on the scanner itself. They can simply choose one, and the scanner scans the documents, and they are now sent to that third-party processing. And now they can go back and do what they do best, provide world-class healthcare. And this is the future of scanning. Again, they don't have to initiate scanning from the software. There's no post-scanning requirement to have them code the document. They can simply capture the document in real time. That video was less than 30 seconds to scan those documents. They're now sent, they can now be processed, and the next clinician or nurse or healthcare admin can use the scanner and do that same process. And because they use their card to log in, we have a full chain of custody about where that document was scanned and who scanned it. All right. And with that, we're right at the top of the hour. So I'm going to check the QA chat, but I think we've got some final poll questions and we need to award today's gift certificate. So can we do that now, please?
Yes. So the survey will be when you exit today's session. I want to thank Scott and Josh for presenting today to our New England Himss members. And if you have more questions for them, please feel free to register for our spring conference on Thursday. They will be in booth 13. And today's Amazon gift winner is Tracy Weed. So congratulations, Tracy. And Marianne will be reaching out to you with that Amazon gift card. And thank you to everyone again for joining us today on our session today.
Hey, thanks again. I want to remind everyone to come see us Thursday at your spring social. So we will be there in person. We'd love to meet you. Thanks again for having us today.